These are some of the faces of the kids locked up in the Ohio juvenile justice system.
We have created in Ohio a system of juvenile corrections that is far too heavy on the institution side.
Another critical piece that Ohio has to focus on is reforming its sentencing laws. It has pushed more kids into the system, not based on risk, not based on need, but sometimes based on just a desire to get tough on crime.
Those of us who do this know that merely incarcerating large groups of kids, they get worse. We know they get worse.
If I would have listened to my mom's point of view and my father's point of view, then I would have never been here.
Ohio's leaders have been working collectively to build upon an historic legal settlement, and Ohio is poised to be one of the first states to implement recommended practices and comprehensive system reforms. Our cameras took a look at what further changes can be made in Ohio's juvenile justice process that serve and protect communities, but also best treat the kids in these facilities.
If you ever have an opportunity to change behavior, it's going to occur when they're a child. And I think all the studies show that the longer that a youth is incarcerated, the less likely it's going to be that he's going to be successful on the outside.
These are the parents of Ryan Casey, a youth currently in Ohio's juvenile justice system.
Ryan, overall a good kid. Got caught up and made some bad choices. Very athletic, played with the kids in the neighborhood. If you saw him, you know, you'd think of him as a quintessential All-American boy. What happened was the biggest shock that we ever got. We never expected to be in this position.
I think any good system should have some system of judicial oversight through the entire time that that kid is committed to a state agency. Not to necessarily be the one to make the call about release, but at least to be able to review that decision and terminate a commitment if it's appropriate.
I still believe that the judge is still the judge, regardless of the attorney, to make those kinds of decisions. And I don't think safety is compromised by a judge making those kinds of decisions.
My name is Linda Tusi Teodosio, and it's my privilege to serve as judge here at the Summit County Juvenile Court. If you look to the Ohio statute and even some recent Ohio Supreme Court decisions, they really talk a lot about the juvenile court being unique and different from the adult court system. Our purpose here isn't so much to punish as it is to rehabilitate, and I've noticed in recent years that purpose seems to have shifted a little bit, and there seems to be a real feel in the community, a feel in the legislature about trying to shift more to a punishment-oriented system. And I think it's really incumbent upon judges to use their good sense and the system to use its resources to try to deal with young children for what they are, that is young children, and getting them back on the right path.
Judges are best able to make those kinds of decisions because they have the most experience in dealing with the police officers, dealing with probation, dealing with the attorneys. And I think they have a perspective that's unique in terms of what's likely to be best for this individual based on what the police said, what the probation said, and what the attorney said.
There have been instances where the law has required that I transfer a case to the adult system where I didn't necessarily agree that that was the best outcome for that child. And sometimes, you know, kids make really horrible mistakes at age 17 and they commit a very serious offense. And in some instances, I would like the opportunity to hold on to that youth, especially in cases where it's a first offense. I hate to see anyone under the age of 18 who gets in trouble for the first time jump immediately to the adult system without the juvenile system even been given the opportunity to try to help them. And, you know, sometimes we see that happen. A child makes a particularly poor choice in the first instance, and, you know, we're really left with no opportunity to work with them.
From my perspective, mandatory minimum sentences are not consistent with the original notions of the juvenile court, and it's another sort of adultification of the process.
Removing mandatory specs across the board, I think, is a good idea. I think judges are in the best position to judge, to make those kinds of decisions based on the experiences in their courtroom. And sometimes trying to legislate specific punishment I think is oftentimes a bad idea.
Good morning, fellas. My name is Cedric. Good morning, Cedric. We got a joke and icebreaker by Mr. Sam.
What we were experiencing in Ohio was that our youth population was expanding tremendously in the institutions, these faraway institutions that are in the middle of nowhere. We were adultifying the system. We passed laws that said, okay, we're going to have mandatory time for people who are engaged with guns when they commit a crime. Oh, and let's do that for kids too. So we end up having these mandatory minimums that don't work on the adult side applied to youth as well. And our population starts swelling. We still subscribe in the youth system to the notion that people will be rehabilitated.
The current juvenile justice system is broke as we've moved more to an adult model because we see young people with adult issues. We've lost that these are our children. And these aren't necessarily our children of the future, they're our children of right now.
John Hurley is the lead social worker at one of Ohio's toughest juvenile correctional facilities, ORV.
I try not to judge how the parents did, because in reality, I mean, all of our kids are one time in juvenile court away from being here. Recently, I'll just tell you, recently I reviewed a youth who is 14 years old, and he has a 6-year sentence. And I was struck by the enormity of the task that's in front of us. I think it's harder for people to see that for adolescents, because they think that adolescence is a time of being carefree. But for a lot of our kids who come here, carefree stopped at about 7. I mean, these are kids whose neighborhoods have gunshots on a regular basis, who most of the adult males in their life have gone to prison. We start with preteens or early teens, and we turn adult men out of here. All of us grow up by making mistakes and learning from mistakes. All of us do that growing up. And you have to have freedom to make mistakes. And in a correction facility, you have very little freedom. We're going to tell you when to get up, we're going to tell you when to go to bed, we're going to tell you when to eat, we're going to tell you what to eat, because you don't have control of that. And to run a facility, you have to maintain that order. Well, the less freedom the kids have, the less mistakes they get to make, but the less they grow and mature. So we have a bunch of 20-year-old bodies that still have 14-year-old emotional systems. And I can't keep turning 20-year-olds out who have 14-year-old skill levels. I mean, they're not going to be successful. Even if I teach them how to get a job and how to hold a job, there's just a lot of decisions you have to make in life. And I guess the most important decision is you have to learn how to make mistakes and fall down and get back up.
He did get in trouble. He was sentenced to 2 years with judicial review in a year because there was a gun specification. Even though he'd never been in trouble before, that didn't matter. The law says that if there's a weapon involved, she had no choice. When she was sentencing him, she looked at me and she was aware of the fact that that my cancer had reoccurred, and that, you know, my doctor had written her a letter saying it could be months. And she looked at me and she said, "There's nothing I can do."